Good evening. It's a few minutes past 6 on Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022. I'd like to call tonight's meeting of the Sutton Select Board to order. If you all would, please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next up, we have the blurb. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, this meeting of the Sutton Select Board is in a hybrid format with both in-person and Zoom components. To join the meeting, visit www.zoom.us/join and enter meeting ID number 880-2498-9095 and a passcode of 908280. This meeting will be broadcast and recorded on local public access stations, Verizon Channel 31 and Charter Spectrum Channel 191, and live streamed on the town's YouTube channel when available. All right, next up, we have to do a roll in terms of how we are participating with tonight's meeting.
David Hall, present.
Wendy Mead, appearing remotely.
Jonathan Anderson, present.
Jeff Bannon, present.
And Jesse Lemanik, present. Thank you. All right, next up, we have public forum, limited to 5 minutes per topic. Discussion or comments about town employees or agency members shall be avoided so as not to violate individuals' rights. Is there anyone here in person for public forum? All right, is there anyone on Zoom for public forum?
Yes. Good evening, Board of Selectmen, Town Manager. My name is James LaPlante. Live at 26 Heritage Road.
Excuse me, James, could you do me a favor? Could you turn on your camera?
I don't have the camera functioning at this moment, unfortunately.
Are you dialing in?
I have it up on my tablet, but it's not working.
All right, proceed.
I apologize. I mean, I'll write you a formal letter if you would like, or appear before you again. I'm requesting to the chair to address the board.
This is public forum, go ahead.
Okay, and as a municipal department head, I won't take up too much of your time. I understand there's a time frame and everything's time sensitive. Go through plenty of meetings myself. But at this time, I would like to formally and respectfully request that a meeting be held with the town manager, the Board of Selectmen, planning director, the board as well as members of the Conservation Commission to address the concerns of the residents and abutters of the parcel formerly known as Aggregate Industries, now Unified Global Packaging Group, as well as other concerned citizens and residents of Sutton before we seek our legal assistance.
Anything else?
Nope, that is it at this time, sir.
All right,
Don't want to take up too much of your time.
We're good, I appreciate that. Is there anyone else on Zoom for a public forum? All right, hearing none. Marie DaCosta? Oh, that was the same line? Oh, all right, I apologize. Just a little confusion on my part. All right, thank you very much, Mr. LaPlante, for your comments. We'll take them under advisement.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yep, have a good evening. All right, seeing how there's no one else here for public forum, why don't we move on to the minutes of our previous select board meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the April 19th, 2022 Select Board minutes as presented.
Second.
All right, here in a motion and here in a second. Any other questions, comments, concerns about the minutes? All right, why don't we do a roll?
David Hall, aye.
Wendy Mead, aye.
Jonathan Anderson, aye.
Jeff Bannon, aye.
And Jesse Lemanik, aye. All right, next up, it looks like we have a proclamation pertaining to Arbor Day. Mr. Clark, if you would.
Arbor Day Proclamation. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for planting trees, and whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas Trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now therefore, I, Jesse Lemanik, Chairperson of the Select Board in the town of Sutton, Massachusetts, Tree City, USA, do hereby proclaim April 29th, 2022 as Arbor Day in the town of Sutton, Massachusetts, and I urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And further, I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. Read into record on May 3rd, 2022.
All right, thank you very much. The thing I love about those proclamations is they are all one sentence.
Whereas,
Yeah, whereas.
May I?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. So Wendy and I actually had the pleasure of attending the Arbor Day ceremonies this year at Shaw Farm. And I got to read that proclamation to a group of fourth graders who were not particularly interested, I would say, but nonetheless, we got to read it. Matt Stencil and his crew were down there, as they always are. This year, as I said, it was at Shaw Farm. In the past, it's been at Veterans Field, and probably because of the renovations that are there, they moved it to Shaw. I'm not really sure. Maybe they just had planted enough trees there.
yeah, I think that's it. And now we're focusing on Shaw, and we've got a couple more years of Shaw.
Yeah. It actually, so Howie Bottomley was there, and they gave the kids like a tour of some of the trails and some points of interest there, and I actually have a really good time going to these Arbor Day things, and that was as good a time. I think this is the best Arbor Day we've had, so thanks to Howie, thanks to Matt and the team, and thanks for Wendy for providing a little company while we're down there, so it was all good. So, thank you.
All right, thank you, Dave. Wendy, would you like to add anything to Dave's comments?
Yeah, no, obviously I echo his comments, and I just hope people keep in perspective the true meaning of Arbor Day. They put in 3 trees, cherry and 2 maples, if I recall. And, I look forward to watching them take root, and hope it's really reflective of, the town growing as well, in the sense of, pure air and all of the other items that the trees bring us. And we asked the 4th graders, what benefit does the trees provide? And the number 1 answer, I think, was gum and makeup. So, interesting perspective. But that's all I have.
That was the clean air
Thank you.
thing.
Well, that's what I said. I hope it grows the clean air. But if you're a 4th grader, you're going to get gum and makeup. So,
I guess the fourth graders have their priorities.
yeah, makeup. I don't know. Very troubling. But that's all I have for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Jonathan, do you have any comments?
No, I'm all set.
Jeff?
I'm all set, thank
Yeah, I have nothing to add. Thank you both for attending. It's always a good day, and the thing that I always liked about the years that I attended is the fact, as was mentioned, that the kids come out and the kids have fun. So, thank you very much. All right, moving on to our regularly scheduled agenda items. It looks like we have a hefty list of items to deal with tonight. The biggest of which, maybe the most important of which tonight, is a special one-day wine and malt requests. Not just 1, but 9 for Valancourt Folk Art. Ultimately, it will cover their wonderful Christmas season worth of events. Oh, I gave a spoiler out. Is there anyone here representing Valancourt Folk Art?
Wow, delegation.
Oh, I like this.
Trusting me.
Luke, how you doing?
Wonderful.
Good.
Thanks for having us here.
Good. Before I let you go, Jim, is there anything else you'd like to
No,
add?
that's pretty much it. I've run this by the chief, and he says, he's never had an issue with Valancourt in all the years they've been holding these events. So, we can hear from Luke and how it's gonna entail, but I know that a tip-certified server is gonna be on duty, and everything else checks out.
All right, thank you. All right, Luke, you ready?
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Spotlight's on you, my friend.
well, thank you. So, obviously we're here, it's May, so we like to have a lot of, time to plan in case we have to make adjustments and everything. But we're in front of you for 9 one-day wine and malt licenses for the Christmas season. So we do a lot of events, to supplement the retail store that we have there. The biggest being the Chris Kindle Market that we have. We also have a few mini wine markets that we've been doing the past few years. We introduced those during COVID when we couldn't have the large event. And then also we have the Dickens performances. So we have Charles Dickens's great-great-grandson fly in from London. We have a theater there. And what we tried to do starting 2 years ago was, selling some beer and wine during intermission before the show, which has worked. So we like to continue that. And then the final event that we have is a Chamber of Commerce Christmas party, where we host a lot of the businesses in the area, so they can come in, do Christmas shopping, and kind of celebrate, the business community there as well. So we're really looking to mimic exactly what we did last year. We haven't had any issues. Obviously, any time that we think that there could be a lot of people, we do look at having a police detail there as well, but we haven't had, any other need to do that, we found.
All right, perfect. Do you mind if I open up to my colleagues for questions or comments?
Absolutely.
Excellent, thank you. Dave?
Thank you. As you guys know, normally when we have people before us looking for alcohol licenses, we spend a lot of time talking about safety and all the right things to do, but you've been here so many times, and as Jim mentioned, you know what you're doing. There's never been a problem. We're looking at a thing that tells us you have tip-certified bartenders there the whole time, so.
Yes.
In fact, what this really becomes at this point is just a celebration of the events that you're doing and a chance to do a little bit of advertising. So, I sort of welcome having you guys come back because, you have created some great things down there that the community really seems to appreciate and enjoy. So, thank you, and I would say continued good luck with that.
I appreciate that. And just, we don't take that, lightly and for granted. It's really important that, we continue to do, the right things. So, thank you.
Yeah, no, we appreciate that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Wendy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just an observation rather than a question. As David mentioned, we've been through this with and on behalf of Valancourt for many, many years. I'm just excited to see it's really an example of, the world getting back to a little bit more of the normal that we knew. And I know I tremendously look forward to several of these events. So I don't really have any questions, just that comment. And that's all, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Wendy. Jonathan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I really have nothing more to add. I mean, just you come every year. This continues to be a really important event for you, and there's never been any issues, and it's just another testament to a company in our town, or where you've just grown in the town, and you're just part of the fabric of it. And this is a really great event, and I'm excited that you host it, and really no concerns here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jonathan. Jeff?
Thank you. I have no concerns either. I am glad to see that you've made it successfully through through COVID, and you came out the other end. And it's a pretty full slate that you have lined up here, which is great. And it seemed to me a little bit more than last year, but you said it was exactly the same as last year?
This should be the exact same as last year.
Really?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. I just think it's great that you've got this much, this number of events planned, and I admire your ability to plan ahead this far, and I really wish you the best for all of these. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. All right, well, it would behoove me not to be fully transparent with everyone and the viewing public. I have attended several of these events, and just so the residents know, when I go out in public, I do so primarily as a resident, because obviously, it wouldn't be Christmas time without stopping down at Valancourt's. That's been part of our family's Christmas tradition for since Chain of Lights started, I think, back when you were at the house near the golf course. But in recent years, obviously, my position on the board, as I'm walking through these events, I always have, you know, a different set of lenses on. You know, I'm looking at it through the perspective of a selectman. And I can tell you, I have witnessed nothing but true professionalism at the events that I attended. Last year, I had the blessing to attend the extended version of the Christmas Carol. I really felt lucky and just phenomenal performance. And of course, we did stop down on Chain of Lights, and as was mentioned, the staff was professional. They were carding everyone. They were tip certified, but they were also courteous. And everything was well organized. Everything was contained within an environment that, you know, there wouldn't be any passing of the cup, so to speak. So I have full confidence that this year will again enjoy tremendous success. And I wish you the best of luck, and I can promise you both that this year I'm going to get to Chris Kindlemart, because my wife was not pleased that the ticket sold out and I missed it online, but I'll be there at least for that one this year. So,
Thank you very much.
all right, and of course, good luck in the time between now and then as well. You know, I know Christmas time is, you know, big for you guys, so best of luck. And any trips planned? I know you guys are international with your business.
The next international will be in 2023, so
Fantastic.
another Viking cruise.
Oh, nice, nice. Well, I might have to keep an eye out for that one as well. All right, well, thank you very much.
Great, thank you guys very much.
Yep. All right, I believe we do have a motion on the table.
Yes, Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd like to make a motion to approve 9 one-day special licenses to serve Walton wine and/or malt at Valancourt, Oakheart, outside the license section 15 off-site wine malt license, located at 9 Main Street for various Christmas season gatherings on the following dates: November 7th, 11th, 12th, 19th, 26th, 27th, December 3rd, 10th, and 17th. There shall be a tip-certified bartender on site.
All right. Second. All right, hearing a motion and second. Any other comments, questions, concerns? All right, why don't we do a roll?
David Hall, aye.
Wendy Mead, aye.
Jonathan Anderson, aye.
Jeff Bannon, aye.
And Jesse Lemanik, aye. Good luck to you both, and I look forward to seeing you once we get past summer. Thank you once again, Judge. Appreciate it. Thank you for what you do. All right, next up, we have the town manager's update. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A few updates for the board. The first is a cherry sheet update. The House Ways and Means Committee released their recommended cherry sheet numbers for the House of Representatives. The governor's budget increased Chapter 70 by $30 per student. House Ways and Means doubled it to $60 per student. So that's good news. That's what we were looking for, particularly with the unprecedented revenues coming into the state of Massachusetts. That's an additional $37,000 for the school department, and that's good. We would like to continue to see, hopefully the Senate even does a little bit better than that. You know, it's just all about revenue to run the system. You know, a circuit breaker is another need of the town of Sutton. With the unprecedented special education costs doubling in the last 3 years, it's something that we need, and we've made that known to our representatives and senator, and they've so far done a nice job for us on Chapter 70 at least. Painting of Town Hall. We opened bids on this last Thursday, the 28th. 7 contractors submitted bids. We're reviewing those bids, and you know, we'll issue a notice of award when complete. You know, I generally give them to our building commissioner. He then does, you know, looks at all of these contractors, looks at their, you know, what work they did and recommendations and so forth. John is out of the office this week due to bereavement leave, but he'll be back next week, and then we'll get moving on this. Planning Board special permit hearing process. The Planning Board began their special permit hearing process for Unified Development. The Unified is looking for approval for buildings 2 and 3. As you know, Unified purchased the old aggregate site, as well as the hatchery site and Worcester Sand and Gravel, for a total of somewhere in the order of 450 acres of land. This is well known, as we've all been talking about this over the years, as our last big development here in the town of Sutton. And to the extent that we even classified as a 43D site, a 43D site as a priority development location. So it is zoned appropriately, office, warehousing, and distribution. I am aware of the work that they're conducting on site as having an impact with the residents. You know, particularly with the blasting. None of the blasts have exceeded the state limit of 2.0. All except for one blast have been less than 1. You know, we had a blast this afternoon at 3 o'clock. I was out there during that. The blast came in on Heritage Road as 0.45. So that's the standard. Yet even with that, there's an impact. It's not necessarily every time damage, but it's the shock of the blast, and it kind of affects people. So what we have done, you know, that they are blasting at noon or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Art Mahassel is looking to get the word out. They've developed a website, so they are trying to communicate before the blast take place, if the blast is delayed or whatever, so people can be aware. They won't be shocked when it does take place. So it's either noon or 3 p.m., Monday through Friday, and it's generally once or twice a week. You know, there have been times it's been more frequent than that. Later in the summer, it'll be less frequent than that. But it is happening. I do think Unified could have done a better job at notifying the residents. I think coming up with the website is a good idea, but it's a little late to the game. You know, next blast, I want to be up on Heritage Road and experience it from that location. You know, just so I can understand what the residents are going through. I personally don't feel it's right to have a separate meeting with myself and the planning director and the board and conservation and all these other committees when the planning board is going through a special permit hearing process. All comments should be submitted to the planning board through Jen Hager. I did receive some recently from one of the residents, and I forwarded that to, brought it up to Tammy Mahoney. So all of these issues are being brought up, and it's really the responsibility of the developer to address all of these issues. And let's hold their feet to the fire and force them to do it appropriately. So I don't like the way it's been rolled out and the way it's been happening. Again, there's no exceeding of the law, but at the same time, these people are used to a way of life and a quality of life that is wonderful here in Sutton, and we want to protect that and maintain that over the long term. So, you know, it's just, you know, we're working on doing a better job at getting the word out and giving the residents an opportunity to share their concerns with the developer through their website. You know, and one other issue is just a reminder that if you experience any damage to your home, there's a process, and the fire department has forms. You can fill out a form. To date, we've had, I think, 1 or 2 forms submitted to the fire department for potential damage. And that's being evaluated and everything else. But again, if you have any sort of damage at your home, to anything, We encourage you to go to the Town of Sutton Fire Department site, or even call the fire department, and they'll get the form out to you for an opportunity to fill that out and get that issue taken care of. So, so that's that. One other item, other than some reminders for events coming up later in the month. I want to give a little shout out to the fire department. They've had a real busy weekend this last weekend. You know, they they had thought it would be a nice, relaxing weekend with a Saturday night recognition banquet, and you know, it didn't work out that way. They ended up at a number of structure fires, mutual aid in Northbridge and Millbury, and bouncing all over the place, culminating on Sunday with the drive-in theater that right now is a suspected arson fire, and we're asking for the public's input in that process. And then they came in at 11:30 at night, and they went home for the night, and they, you know, at 2:30 a.m. the following morning, they got called out again for a structure fire on Mendon Road, a garage fire, which they were very successful in knocking down, and it didn't go into the house. So that's great news. It's a great department. They did a wonderful job, and I just wanted to recognize the entire department for their professionalism and their response, and they're a great group of people. And then I've just got reminders for the rest of my update. That's all I have for updates, Mr. Chairman.
And what are the reminders of?
Just town meeting will be held at the middle school, high school on May 9th, this coming Monday at 7 p.m. Town election will take place Tuesday, May 24th from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And the Memorial Day Parade will take place on Memorial Day, May 30th. The parade will begin at 11:15 a.m. sharp.
All right, thank you, Jim. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Dave, do you have any questions or comments for Jim?
A couple of comments. First of all, Jim, thanks for the update, as always. Good update. I'm glad you sort of expounded a little bit on the cherry sheet thing, because usually it's a little perhaps in the background is helpful, and we should be grateful for money when we do get it. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but I guess every little bit helps, so we'll take that. I'm sort of just taking them in the order that was here. The town meeting and the town election, as always, encourage people to come out. You know, there's a few contested election items, so, you know, your vote counts, so get out and vote. Painting of the town hall, you know, the one thing that, I don't know if I should be surprised. I was surprised there were that many bids.
Yeah.
I was expecting fewer than that, so I'm not sure what that means, but.
You know, it did show some interest, but, you know, the other thing is that there were some that were less than we had budgeted and some that were more. So I rely upon John to really check these companies out, do a due diligence, look at the work that they've done, any recommendations from, you know, contact the places that they've painted and get feedback from them. And he does a nice job at doing that.
So we'd like to get the lowest bid that we can, but the rules don't require that we take the lowest bid. We can still vet the vendors and be sure
Yeah,
that we're going to get the
you
right
know,
quality.
we generally go with the lowest, most qualified bidder that, you know, John makes sure that they have the ability to get the job done and
Yeah.
do a good job for us.
Yeah, it's not a small job,
Right.
so. And I'll come back to Unified, but thank you for mentioning the fire department. I think that was probably on all of our minds. They did have quite a weekend, so. I do want to speak about Unified, though. Jesse and I actually went to that planning board meeting in person. I'm sure everybody's seen it at this point. You know, and the first takeaway that I had from that meeting is I couldn't help but put myself into the shoes of the residents that are over there and feel like, you know, if I was in their circumstances, I probably would be kind of concerned. Everything that I hear is that the communication elements of the blasting just didn't go well. So if you weren't prepared for it and all of a sudden there's blasting going on and maybe you weren't aware of the project that was happening, that's, you know, there's a lot to take in a short period of time. So, you know, and at the planning board meeting, and I don't think this was the fault of the planning board at all, But they really weren't there to provide a lot of answers to those things at that time. That's not what that meeting was for, and that's not really, blasting in particular is just not their jurisdiction. Nonetheless, for the residents, it's frustrating because you're looking for answers, and you're not getting answers, and you're looking for a place to go. So I'm glad that we're able to at least begin to get some information out. I would encourage, I really want to encourage publicly for Unified to get some more information on their website that they've created and be good about communicating with people. I think communication is key. The planning board and all the boards around town, certainly the fire department, is concerned about the residents, and they always do a good job, but they're getting some bad press here for things that I don't think really is their fault, so I am looking for ways to try to maybe assist in the communication wherever we can. The idea of having some kind of joint meeting has been floated even before tonight. My concern about that, before you had made your comments, was that I don't know what the purpose of that meeting would be. This board doesn't really have any jurisdiction over any of the things that are being discussed, and I would not want to give people the impression that we can have a meeting and change anything. We can't do that. There is a process, as you point out, and we have to go through that process. The blasting itself had to go through a process in order to be approved, and it's been through that process. It does not mean that there might not be some consequences, unintended consequences of the blasting. And as you point out, there is a process for submitting claims, and I would, as I understand it, there's a limited time for that process. So if you've got some kind of claim, make it fast, so you don't get time barred from making that process, from taking advantage of that process. But I have to say this. You mentioned this has been board priority for as long as I can remember, of developing the commercial property that exists in Sutton. We have very little commercial properties. Everybody on this board knows, the balance of taxes being paid by homeowners rather than commercial interests in the town of Sutton is, very, very skewed towards homeowners. And so developing the small amount of commercial property that we do have available, even in all the years I was on the finance committee, was a board priority back then. And it's been a stated board priority the whole time I've been on this board. So this was a great opportunity when this building project came up. I supported it then. I continue to support it. It's been zoned industrial, I'm told, since the zoning laws were adopted in Sutton. The bylaws were adopted in Sutton, I think, in 1955. So it's been available for development. And there's really not much we can do about that other than to enforce the zoning laws that do exist. And I would say that our planning board is good at that, and they understand the balance between the commercial interests and the homeowners' interests that are there. And they have to do their job. And I anticipate, because they've done it and done it well for years, that they will do their job. And, we'll have that as good a balance as you can get with a project like this. So we just have to kind of let that play out. So the other thing that I was excited by with this project was that it was unified, and we have a lot of experience with unified. And so it's unfortunate that at this point, the communication piece at least does not seem to have gone as well as we would have hoped. And I would say our experience with unified is generally sort of supported in the past. But with that said, I guess I remain confident that they will come through, and when we're done, this project will be a good project for the town. I expect, it's hard to say that the residents there aren't going to feel a change. They are. And for the next couple of years, when this building project is going on, it's going to be disruptive. I don't think you can really avoid that. But within the parameters that exist, I think I'm confident that it's going to be as good a project as we can hope for, and the impact on that community and neighborhood will be mitigated to the extent that it can be. So, but again, I want to just thank you for bringing it up. I think these guys are looking for answers. I'm sure we don't have them all tonight, but for us to work as hard as we can to get information out to people is at least where I think they deserve it. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dave. Wendy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of comments. I don't think there's been many times in my life that I've said I was thankful to the Ways and Means Committee, but this would be one of the few. The cherry sheet isn't necessarily the bottom line, so I can only keep my fingers crossed for a little more funding to come in. I think it's interesting that the town meeting is on Jim's update after the whole discussion about Unified. I guess part of my concern is the appearance of lack of transparency on behalf of the boards. Had I not been involved in watching a lot of the committee meetings, being on one of the committees myself, I think that it's not a lack of transparency, it's a lack of involvement by certain parts of the community. And I don't mean that in a pejorative way in any sense. We all have very busy lives. Unfortunately, looking forward to, the next town meeting, this project was approved at town meeting. And unfortunately, the citizen count at that town meeting was quite small. I would say under 70, if I recall. I wish it didn't take people by surprise. I am glad to see, and just for the community, Art Mahassel and Len McAleer, they are running this project for Unified. Jim, do you know what the website is or the link where people can get the additional information might be?
Can you get that? We'll get that for you prior to the end of the meeting, Wendy.
Okay, that would be great. Just because I think it's really critical for people to get some idea about what's going on. Hopefully that link will also include information on how they can make claims if necessary. And, I think the information that you were able to provide about was the state limits on the blasting. I think that would be really helpful information to provide to people because, again, they do have a right to know for sure. I think it's unfortunate that they know now after the project has started. But, I do really hope that, Unified in particular can do a bit of a better job about getting that information out there. And just, thank you again for mentioning the fire department. They once again made the town very proud. So that's all I have for tonight, Mr. Chair. And Jim, thank you for your update.
All right, thank you, Wendy. And Jim has that URL available.
It's
Oh, great.
Unified2 parkwayproject.com, all one word, Unified2 parkwayproject.com.
Unified 2 as the number 2?
Number two.
Yeah,
Number 2.
that was my question. Okay, so I do encourage the public to take a look at that, see if that answers your questions. Obviously, it's not going to answer all of your concerns at this point, but at least perhaps it'll provide a little more pertinent information. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Wendy. Appreciate it. Jonathan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Jim, for your update. Sure. As far as the cherry sheet goes, it's good to see that they're giving out a little bit more, but still pretty minimal for the needs, and especially the requirements that the state puts upon us, especially around special education, and requires a lot more funding than what, so we have to scrape and find it, where if they're requiring these things, I think they should be ponying up the money to fund these things. So it's part of my continued frustration with the funding model that they have in place. As far as the painting of the town hall, it's just good to see we have so many bids, and especially now that the church across the street looks so beautiful. It'd be good to gotta keep up with the neighbors.
Setting a high bar.
Yes. And then as far as the Unified project, I think I watched the the planning board meeting, and having been on the planning board myself, just, trying to put myself in the shoes of the people that live around the project, and, even just like I had the property next to me is being developed, and they were having problems with their well, and I was concerned about them having to frack, and so I was quite concerned about that. So I went out and did testing on my own well so that I had a baseline, and that was just a teeny little project. I can understand where people would be quite concerned about, blasting and whatnot. So it's unfortunate that the communication wasn't put out there, and and I think part of when we were going through the TIF process, part of one of the reasons why we gave them the TIF that they did is because of their kind of commitment to the community, and particularly when there's been issues. I know there was some sound or noise issues at one point, and they dealt with it pretty quickly.
Correct, at their current facility on
Yep.
46.
On the current facility. So I'm hoping that they can rectify this and live up to what they do. I know it's a little bit more complicated now because they're a much larger company that has merged with Kraft Company, so I'm hoping that they still kind of live to the roots of starting here and address people's concerns. And what I'm really hoping too is that it's not just the town that has to chase them down or the residents to have to prove the case. I'm hoping that they put together a process to track these issues and then diligently go through them and try to solve them and not make it the town's problem or the residents, especially the residents' problem. I mean, we're here to protect the residents, but at the end of the day, I'm really hoping that they really take charge on this and take the lead. And even during the planning board meeting, I think they had an opportunity to address, even though the meeting was for the building 2 and building 3, I felt that they could have addressed the crowd there, which most of them were probably there because of their concerns about the project. So I think there was some missed opportunities there as well. One of the things that I'm trying to understand for myself is, we're in special permit site plan review right now. Do we know what the authorization was for them to start to actually do the site preparation and the blasting? Was that do you know? Because usually if you're doing a site plan, you haven't been approved to move forward with the work. So do you know? I tried to get a hold of Jen. I think she's on.
Yeah,
she's
Jen's
away.
at a conference. She'll be back next couple days.
Yeah.
Tomorrow or Thursday.
I know there was an approval for the road, but I don't know if that's where they're working with the blasting. But I'm just kind of curious myself as to what has prompted them to be able to start the process without having approval of, the site plan review process. Yeah, so I think that's something that I'm curious about, and I will follow up with, because that's a key piece. And there may have been something that was approved through the process, but just the TIF itself is not enough. It's, that's just the process of us coming to an agreement around tax incentives.
Yeah.
The actual approval for the project is through the planning board and through the site plan review process that we just started, the 25th, I think it was. Yeah.
I mean, keep in mind that, people are concerned about the TIF. The fact is, they have the right to develop that land if they didn't get a TIF. So just by a right to do what they're doing. The TIF obviously was an advantage to them, but also an advantage to the town for what we're getting out of it. But pros and cons on both sides of that, but they had the right to develop that site.
Yeah, I mean, within the context of the existing bylaws.
Regardless of the TIF.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the TIF is a separate issue. But I think, the process is really starting now with the planning board approval process, and this is what started last week. And I think it was just really the preliminary discussions and kind of giving of information and all of that. So that's what I'm interested in.
I don't have the details, but they did talk about a separate approval that was done for some of the site work, so.
Yeah, I know there was, especially around the road. And I was trying to find the actual date that was so I could review it.
Yeah, to your point, one of the things they mentioned is they took the whole totality of the site and they essentially rezoned it into 5 separate parcels. One of the parcels was where building 1 was going to be. 2 of the parcels where buildings 2 and 3 was. The 4th parcel was the road area, and a fifth parcel was parcel up and behind. So I'm assuming they probably got the green light to go forward, whatever that meeting would be. But,
Yeah.
but again, I don't remember if they mentioned it at that meeting.
Yeah, I mean, again, they were just talking about the fact that there was some approvals to go do this kind of site work that they were doing relative to the road. It's not my area of expertise, so
Yeah.
I'm not that
Yeah.
familiar with it, so.
And the meeting itself dealt with the special permit, I believe, had to deal with the height of the buildings. The warehouse is buildings 2 and 3. I think that was the reason why they were having the hearing to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, they're doing all the site planning work now to
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah,
build it.
for buildings 2 and 3 only right now,
2 and 3, and then 1 would be forthcoming at,
as they sign a contract with.
yeah, once they actually
Yeah.
had a tenant.
So yeah, that was just one thing that after I watched the planning board meeting, I was just kind of curious about, so I'm trying to find that information so that we have clarity on what that looks like. Yeah, so I think it's obviously a very, for a lot of people that are next to it, it's, a real big change, and sometimes those changes aren't easy. And in communication, I think, is the utmost. So I just really encourage Unified to really take charge on that and not just look to the town to manage that for them. Obviously, we're going to make sure we protect the residents, but in the end of the day, I think it's in their best interest to do a little bit better job in that space. As far as, let's see, I think everybody's talked about the town meeting and all that. I encourage people to go to town meeting so that people can be informed on these things and participate and give their voice, and then also just the elections as well. It's so important that we get out and support our local governments and put our voice in. And I also too would like to acknowledge the fire department, and I was just struck. I was actually driving by the fire where just about minutes after the fire department got there, so I was able to still get through. And there was fire on both sides of the road. It was pretty chaotic at that moment in time, and there was just fires everywhere. And we were just like, wow. And then we heard there was a fire in Miriam Lane, and I don't know if and then it was some in Northbridge, and it was just one of those crazy days. And yeah, so I just want to acknowledge the work that they do, and how they just always do exactly, just right here for us all to protect us. So thank you. And that's all I
Mr.
have.
Chair, may I make one additional comment? I apologize.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Just to follow up on something that Jonathan had alluded to. I had tuned in by Zoom to that meeting as well. And while I know the lease for Building 1 is still being negotiated, I just think it's critical that Unified update that website with regard to who the tenant in Building number 1 is going to be. Again, I realize the lease is not finalized yet. I understand that whole process. But once they have reached a conclusion on that lease, I think it's really critical to let people, particularly in that part of town, know what to expect. That's my only additional comment, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Wendy. Jonathan, anything else?
No, I think the only just last thing, just in light of that, is going back to Unified, is that I agree with Wendy on that needs to be disclosed as soon as possible. I think it was really challenging for myself, and I think for a lot of residents, when they couldn't disclose it when we were going through the TIF process. And we need to understand, and I also am really keen on the traffic studies are going to be really critical in this project. And that's something that I'm going to be watching very closely to understand, both as a selectman but also as a resident, because it could have big impact on the quality of life, especially in that part of town. So,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me start with the firefighters. I mean, this was a very difficult weekend, very difficult week, really, that they've had. And they do a heck of a job for us. I'm just so thankful that none of them were hurt, particularly on a fire of a structure fire that's been an abandoned structure. I hope that if anyone has information on that, they can come forward with that so we can get some answers as to the origin of that fire. But thanks to the entire department, as well as the mutual aid communities around as well. Yeah, the cherry sheet, we'll see, you know. It's not a lot of money, but we'll take whatever they have. So, you know, I think all of us have heard from residents about the Unified project and some of the concerns around that project for the residents in those neighborhoods. And they're absolutely valid concerns and valid worries that they have. You know, Unified has been a great corporate partner for the town over the years. I think, though, that this time there is a missed opportunity to get out in front of this and to inform the town about the blasting. I think, you know, I didn't know about that it was going to happen until after it happened. And I think that's and I don't live there in that neighborhood, and I think that's a problem. And I think they should have gotten out in front of that, obviously. And I'm glad that they're going to work to improve that communication now. You know, I think, Jim, you mentioned that the complaints or concerns during the planning board meeting, which I watched it as well, that the developer has the responsibility to address those concerns. And, you know, I guess to that I would say they may have already done that, but they haven't communicated that. And what I mean by that is a lot of those questions seems to me the type of questions that would have come up previously and were addressed somehow. And I think Jen even alluded to, it's in this document, it's another in this, but there's really no one place where all those concerns, where all those questions are addressed. And it's not easy for, it's certainly not easy for me to go through all those, the approval process. I mean, Jonathan, you're much more familiar with that than I am. And I'm sure, though, you know, you have questions about it. And I think that one of the concerns that I have tonight with just tonight's meeting with us is there were questions raised about the project that we don't know the answer to. But because of that, you know, we're somehow giving the impression that something wasn't done, or that the proper approvals weren't obtained before all this started. And I don't want people to come away from this meeting with that impression that these questions are out there and haven't been answered, because I'm sure they have. I hope they have. Let me put it, I shouldn't say I'm sure they have, because I haven't followed up on it. But I don't want, you know, we all have questions, and I think that just goes to the whole communication issue. I mean, we do a great job here in town with communicating other events, other information. But for whatever reason, this has not been handled, you know, in the same way. And again, I think it was a missed opportunity from the developer on this, from Unified. And I'm hoping that they can move very quickly on this to establish some better means of communication, get some information out to people. You know, because you're right, they do have the responsibility to address those questions, and they, you know, I hope that they would move with, I hate to use this word, alacrity, to get that done. A couple of things with regard to the blasting. My understanding is that if there is damage to residents' property, that there's 30 days that they have to file a report on that. So as Dave mentioned, as Jim mentioned, that I would hope that people can understand that and can move very quickly to make sure, because I don't want, you know, I just hate to have people miss out by a day, 2 days, a week, or whatever it is, just because they didn't know. So there are forms that the fire department can help you with on that. Blasting is regulated to a great degree by the state. The state has blasting information available on, I wish I had brought the URL, but if you Google this, the state and Google, Massachusetts blasting information for property owners, the state has a document that they put out. It's very readable, and it talks about blasting and what the issues are, the common issues are for property owners in the state. So I would hope that people can access that site. And I will give you the URL, www.mass.gov/doc/blasting-for-property-owners/download. Again, mass.gov/doc/blasting-for-property-owners/download. Thank you. And it's a consumer-friendly type of document. So I hope that the residents can hopefully find some information on that. And finally, this is an important project for the town, and I think we all want it to succeed and go well and have a good result. I mean, it's very important to our economic future. I think we've talked about that in previous meetings as to what it means to the town financially. And what that means to the residents in turn is that we can hopefully avoid requesting overrides, avoid looking at service cuts or personnel layoffs. So it's an important project, and we need to get it right. And I think it starts with communication. So that's what I have to say on that. And town meeting, town election, Memorial Day parade. We have all the dates, so that's great. There you go.
Thank you, Jeff. Pam?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
the fire department has a blasting section on their department homepage that has a link to that document.
Oh, perfect.
As well as the forms for them to download.
Oh.
And as a point of reference to Jonathan, December 6th, all those planning materials are there. That was the first public hearing for that unified, the initial project that you were looking for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, if,
Anybody hear you?
Yes.
yeah, that's what I was just going to ask. The mics are on? Or should we repeat that?
Yeah, we should repeat that.
All right. So apparently, the document that Jeff alluded to is available on the Sutton Fire Department's website. The downloadable form that comes from the state is available. And the dates in terms of the meeting when all the permits occurred for the unified site was on December 6th. I assume that was recorded on YouTube. You can get that. Meeting minutes available on the town's website.
The meeting materials are available on the planning boards. They have an archive button.
Okay.
So you can go back and there's probably about 10 documents that are listed there.
All right, so if you go onto the town's website and you go to the planning board section, there is an archive. And I guess from that archive, you can access all of the documents that were presented at the December 6th meeting. Did I get it right? All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have just one more thing to add.
Sure.
Also. As far as getting information, one of the questions that was asked of us was, how were people made aware of meetings, what's on the agenda for various meetings on the boards? And on the SuttonMA.org website, I believe in the top right, there's an e-alert button that you can sign up for, and you'll have all the meeting notifications and agendas emailed to you automatically.
Would they get that same email that you send out? Or pretty close to it?
That's specifically, they have to sign up by board.
Oh, okay.
By
You can,
Go
board.
ahead. Yeah.
But it's also posted, every agenda with a link, if it's a hybrid setting, it's also on the town of Sutton's official Facebook page.
so for those of us that aren't always on Facebook, that the e-alerts, though, I know I've signed up for certain boards and you can select which ones you're interested in, and those will be emailed to you automatically. So again, that's on the front page, the home page of the town website up in the upper right.
All right, very good, thank you. Excellent. Thank you for that information, Pam. All right. So much to say. Well, I guess I'll just go, for the most part, in order. Cherry sheet, great, that's awesome. $74,000. You know, it's wonderful that the state's sending this extra money our way, but the fact is that doesn't even come close to paying a full salary for a teacher. Or actually, maybe it's a little more than the average salary in Sutton. The biggest reality is we as a town pay $19.5 million approximately in this last fiscal budget for the schools. And as Superintendent Friend has said multiple times in meetings, approximately 85 to 86% of that is salaries. We pay a high price for teachers because the expectation is that we do our best to well educate the students who walked into that school system. So the reality is, it's great that the state is throwing us some extra money, but it's a pittance. And it's a real shame because a large portion of the school's expenses are the result of mandates that have been passed down over the years. And I know when I was on the school committee, I'm sure Wendy could echo the sentiment, is that whenever the state would come up with a new mandate, it never followed with money. And that's the reality of it. You know, educating kids these days are expensive. And it would be nice to see, as Jim mentioned, you know, the state, all you got to do is put on the news, the state is awash with money. It would be nice if they did a better job fairly distributing it in rough proportion to the actual student population. You know, that would just be fantastic, because that would be equality, at least in my mind. Painting of Town Hall, yep, it looks like if anyone has driven through the Common, there is a competition to see which one of the 3 historical buildings that have been not painted yet are going to be painted. We have Town Hall, of course, but we have Paul Schaefer's house next door, and I don't know who owns the property over there, but it's going to be a race to the finish, but I'm confident Town Hall is going to come out on top. Yeah, no pressure, Jim,
I'll
no
have to
pressure.
call Paul in the morning.
Yep. Yeah, we'll have to ask him to slow things down a little bit. We don't want him to make us look bad. I'm going to jump ahead. I'll save the Unified for last as well. I cannot express in words the thanks that I have for our firefighters. The reality is we have a very small full-time duty crew, and the rest of our department is filled with volunteers. And the volunteers, if any of you had a chance to go to any of their events or any of their trainings, are in many ways as dedicated to the fire department and our town as they are to their families. They willingly give up all hours possible to serve our community. Every single Monday night there's trainings. They're required by law. Again, we've got to thank Massachusetts for this brilliance. They're required to go through hundreds of hours of training just to maintain their certification. They have to go through hundreds of hours of training just to become a volunteer firefighter. And it's a huge expectation, but yet we have a department that's top-notch, and they serve our town whenever they're called upon with the highest level of dedication. And again, if you don't believe me, get a scanner app and listen whenever a firefight is going on. Listen to the way Chief Belcito had complete command of the fire site that was out on 146. He's bringing in multiple apparatus from the different municipalities that responded. He's communicating to men in the field. He's making sure men are not getting exhausted, rotating them out. I mean, I would have loved to seen it in action, but I know just by listening, you know, that it was a job well done. So again, I can't thank everybody who spent their weekends serving the town other than just with those simple words. Thank you. All right, as for Unified, I'm going to speak in many ways similar to my colleagues, but I do have to add in my own 2 cents, simply because similar to many of the people that I know have been posting on Facebook, some of the people that are on Zoom right now, I actually live in the vicinity. I live approximately maybe 3/4 of a mile away from where they're doing the blasting. And every single blast that has gone off, either myself, when I've been home working in my home office, or my wife, when she works out of the house, we felt the blast as well. And I will agree that it is an interesting sensation. And I would imagine as I was when the first blast occurred, didn't even know what it was. Where I live, I'm closer to Boston Road, and if you've traveled on the end of Boston Road and it gets to Providence, you know the road is currently a mess. There's lots of cold patch fills, so when the trucks bounce over it, you know, particularly if the truck is empty, it booms. And when that first blast occurred, that's all I assumed it was. And it wasn't until, like many, we went on Facebook after the fact and learned about it, that we kind of got a better appreciation as to what was going on. As my colleagues have said, it's scary. And again, I can empathize with those people that are jarred by it. But there is a process that's in place. And if you have experienced damage, again, not meaning to sound like a broken record, I definitely appeal to you to go online, to go to the town fire department's website, download the form, and put in a claim. As far as the idea of having a joint meeting, I'm going to agree with Jim and Dave. I don't think that's a good idea, simply because the way town government is structured, all of the boards have certain jurisdictions, and the jurisdiction of this board is to primarily oversee the operation of the town in general, also protect the town's property, and make sure all the services are provided. One of those expectations are providing services such as the planning department and the building commissioner, as well as conservation. So I am going to trust that the concerns of the residents are being heard by our peers on those boards. And I am sure when the hearings occur, the response will be appropriate. In terms of the April meeting, that was just the initial meeting. I believe they mentioned there's going to be a follow-up meeting. I think they said May 23rd. I'm sure it's on the town website, so don't quote me to that. But as was mentioned by Planning Board, this is the first. And even though they did try focusing the conversation around buildings 2 and 3, the board was very responsive. They were taking notes. They listened to all the concerns. And as they go through, I think they're going to have another hearing meeting on the 23rd, and then they will weigh all of the concerns of the residents when they make their ultimate decision. So in terms of the joint meeting, again, I have confidence that the process is going to work. Now, as far as the communication piece, I am going to completely agree with all of my residents. Because again, as I just mentioned, I didn't, as chairman of this board, I didn't know that blasting was going to occur. I had been amazed at how much earth they were moving, watching the sand piles get shifted around. And then when that first day, that first boom went off, and I'm being completely sincere, I found out on Facebook. And I don't like doing that. So I get it. Ultimately, as has been mentioned, communication, this aspect, it's a private project, it's not a town project, and that burden should fall upon Unified. And while I do have confidence that they will be better, especially knowing the concerns of the residents, because the owners were in the audience at that planning board meeting. They got to see and hear directly the concerns. They have been in town back when it was Atlas Box for as long as I've been living in this town. I've been in Sutton for 26 years. I believe that's when they first opened up their site on Providence Road. So they understand the uniqueness of Sutton. They care about Sutton because obviously they're trying to make Sutton their global headquarters. So I am confident that they will do better. Again, I agree that they have dropped the ball to this point, but again, I am confident that they will do better. They have to, because if you live down in Wilkes, as I do, as do many of the people, some of the names that I recognize on the Zoom screen from Facebook, we're all down there together. Unified's going to be our neighbors, and they're going to be our neighbor for many years to come. And it's just my hope that they do for us today as they've done for us in the past. And at the end of the day, I'm pretty confident they will. So again, if you have concerns, again, make sure you go through the proper channels. Make sure you check out the Unified site for updates. And again, stay tuned for the next planning board meeting. I'm sure it will come up before Concom again in ZBA if it needs to go down that route, because I can stress with confidence that our town hall is completely transparent and forthcoming to the best of our ability. Was I right on the date?
You are.
Okay.
I don't want there to be confusion, though. The planning board is having an out-of-sync meeting on May 10th, but that is not an agenda item. It's a different project. But
So May 23rd is.
May
continuing
23rd is
public
the
hearing.
second round of the public hearing for the special permit in terms of the heights of the buildings.
That's correct.
All right, very good.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman, can I also add one other item
Sure.
to my update? I'm sorry. The school committee last night offered the job of superintendent to Kimberly Roberts-Minardi, and she accepted. Obviously, they're going to have to enter into a contract and everything else, but I want to welcome Kimberly to the town and look forward to working with her. So,
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, that was a pretty exciting process.
yeah.
And the thing I liked about that was the fact that they were pretty much unanimous. So, I mean, that speaks volumes.
Yeah, it
so.
does.
All right, I think that's it. Again, we've mentioned the fact that there is Memorial Day Parade. That's going to be big, May 30th. We have our town meeting on May 9th, and of course, we have town election on May 24th. All right, next up, we have announcements, Select Board Roundtable, correspondence, and business topics. Dave, do you have anything for us tonight?
The answer was yes, and now I didn't write it down, and I can't remember. Arbor Day was on it, so we talked about Arbor Day. And whatever else I had, I'll talk about next time, so thank you.
Fair enough, thank you. Wendy, do you have anything for us tonight?
Yeah, just one quick observation. Probably anybody who watches the news is aware that one of the judges, no, I just forgot her first name, unfortunately, over the weekend, took her own life. And there have been times in the past where others, Kate Spade, Robin Williams, have done the same. And I think part of the misperception out there for a lot of people is they have all this money, they have all this power. Why would they do such a thing? And I think it's just a reminder to all of us that, there's no one that is safe from the disease of depression, whether it's you personally or those around you. So just treat people with kindness. That's my only thought for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Jonathan?
Yeah, I just have one thing just to build on. I just really want to encourage people to attend the site plan review process. It's the actual mechanism that the town has on these projects to go through the project and make sure that these development projects stay within the bounds of the bylaws that we have, the zoning bylaws that we have, and where there's deviation, the discussion, where they're actually asking for ways to mitigate these issues. And so the public comment is really an important part of that process. And but it's also it is the mechanism of how we manage these projects as a town and make sure that they are following in the best interests of the town. And so that's just something I wanted to put out there. And in the process, it does work, but sometimes there is breakdowns in that, and it's dealt with. So I just really want to encourage people, because I know these things kind of come up and we're busy in our lives, but this is the process and the mechanism for people to contribute. And your voices are heard, because when I was on the planning board, there was many times where residents would say things I hadn't even thought of, and it really made me think about it differently. And it did influence the way that I voted on something. So,
And those are public hearings, so they have the
Yeah.
opportunity to speak.
Yep, absolutely. So that's what I wanted to add.
Thank you, Jonathan. Jeff?
Thank you. I did have a couple of things tonight. And the first was to mention our new superintendent, and to thank the school committee for the process that they went through, and the selection committee, or I guess it was search committee.
Search committee.
There were 14 members on the search committee that participated in that. I watched the interviews of all the candidates, and, I'm very excited. I think they got it right. And I'm very excited about the energy that
Kimberly
Roberts-Minardi
Yes.
will bring to the town. So I wish her well. And then the final thing, and Dave and Jonathan, I'm I'm sorry to make you look bad with this one, but I just wanted to wish all the mothers around the table, in the room and online that are watching us, a happy Mother's Day, and to enjoy the day on Sunday. I don't want to make you guys look bad, but
We knew you had it, that's all. We just did it for you.
Yeah, we defer to you. You should write that down quick.
No, I had it for my company. Thank you, Jeff, appreciate that. Well, now I have one less update, but I do have a couple, but that's all right.
Still update
It's a
it.
team, no, it's a team effort, so.
no, not on that, not on that.
All right, fair enough. Well, I speak last. All right, first up, I did reach out to the food pantry. They are running short on some items. What they asked me to mention tonight is the fact that they're running low on coffee, tea bags, corned beef hash, beef broth, brownie mix, and of course, as always, they always appreciate cleaning products of any kind, as well as paper towels, tissues, things along those lines. Next up, Mother's Day breakfast. Oh, down at the Dudley Genren. I was going to mention that. And of course, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers who are listening. I'll second that. Third, this is something that I used to mention all the time when I was on the school committee because I was coaching baseball, and I was always mindful of it. And since I've been on this board, it kind of slipped my mind. But as I was tuning into last night's school committee, my former colleague, Nate Jerome, reminded me of the fact that I always used to mention at the end of the meetings, particularly around this time of year, that it is now flea and tick season. So if you have dogs or if you have kiddos that's spending time outside, make sure you give them a good check, because word on the street is that this tick season is going to be very nasty. Lastly, and I try saving the most important for last, the fact that I have two names that I have to mention of individuals that I was very good friends with that have passed in recent weeks. One of which I completely dropped the ball on, and I apologize. Back on April 7th, we lost one of our volunteer firefighters, Anthony Barron Sr. He passed away after a long battle of illness. But even in his last few years, even though he was kind of down and out, he was still very active in the department. If anyone ever had a chance to meet Tony, he was just one of those guys that just loved life. He was fun to be around, and he always had a smile on his face. So again, I apologize to the firefighter family and his family for that slip of the mind, but we will put it on the record tonight. And also, I have to mention the passing of a longtime veteran, Mr. Robert Smith. He was very active down at the Dudley Genren. He was the finance officer for many, many years. He, too, had an unfortunate battle with cancer. And unfortunately, when the big man upstairs makes his call, even the best of us, well, cancer's awful, and we all know that. So if you all could just join me in a moment of silence. All right, thank you. And on that note, I would invite an invitation to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. Well, I suppose I'm inviting you as well.
Invitation accepted.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn our meeting tonight.
Second.
All right, hearing a motion and second. Any last-minute comments, questions, or concerns? All right, why don't we do a roll call vote?
David Hall, aye.
Wendy Mead, aye.
Jonathan Anderson, aye.
Jeff Bannon, aye.
Jesse Lemanik, aye. Good night, everyone. Happy Mother's Day.
Recording